everyone. It is Monday, March 25th, 2019, for a special meeting regarding budget. Opening statement.
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this special meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on March 22, 2019, by sending a copy of said notice to Tri-Town News, Asbury Park Press, and Star Ledger for information and publication on March 22, 2019, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on March 22, 2019. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with emergency exits for your safety. Upon exiting the meeting room, they are to your left and to your right. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Television. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich. Ms. Richmond.
Present.
Mr. Russo.
He'll be running a couple of minutes late.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell.
Here.
Mayor Berger.
Present. I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and then a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any reports?
Mayor, I guess the best schedule of events, I have a presentation, the overall situation with the budget, and then I have a few of our larger departments here that generally have the largest portion of the budget to be available to present any information and answer any questions that the governing body may have. I do want to note, though, we do have to be complete by 7 p.m. as there's a zoning board meeting scheduled for today. So, getting right into the presentation, especially for the benefit of the new council people. The process so far, up to this point, starts back in the fall, where the department heads all submit their requests and needs for the following year. That's compiled by the CFO. We do have public manager hearings. That was held in late fall to go over what their requests are. As the year ends, we find out our financial situation as of the end of the year, how much surplus we have available, any projects that are not complete, things like that. And then is where the real work begins, where we start meeting with the department heads individually and really drilling down on what their needs are going to be for the following year. So what you've all gotten so far are the cuts that I've made so far to date. So to review some of our 2018 revenue, this shows what we anticipated at the beginning of the year and what was realized after the end of the year. Few notable things. State aid has remained unchanged for several years now. I guess the good news is it's not being reduced, but bad news is it's not increasing either. Our delinquent taxes, we've collected more than we had expected, which is a good sign. And then the change in property taxes is mostly due to the added and omitted taxes, which accounts for about $1 million of that change, and also an increased collection rate, higher than we had anticipated for the year. The status of our surplus funds currently. Last year, we began with just over $10 million. We used almost 6.2 for last year, the 2018 budget. which most of which we were able to regenerate throughout the year, leaving us an ending balance of just over $10 million. The budget that I'm presenting to you tonight will be using $5.8 million of that surplus. Our tax collection rate has been creeping up. So last year, we realized a collection rate of 98.37%, which was a little bit higher than we had anticipated. And then, oops. Missing a page, sorry.
God bless you. Thank you. I have a question. It kind
Sure.
of goes with, in that same area. So just asking, in 2018, you anticipated $80,000 for licensing, and we got in $130,000. But in 19 budget, it's budgeted back at $80,000. Why would we not realize the 130 instead of 80?
It's a conservative estimate on my part. Licenses, it's, I guess, the ebb and the flow of what we may or may not collect from year to year.
In the past 3 years, have we collected more or less than we anticipated? Just asking.
I can find that out, and I can report back, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and this just depicts what our total valuation is for the entire town, which, as you can see, has increased steadily. The 2019 ratables are not certified yet, as we have to wait until the appeals are completed for that. Missing out of here. Yeah. One thing to note, there was a slide that wasn't in here. For using our 2018 tax bill, of the total tax bill, only 16.1% of that was attributed to municipal taxes. 46.7 goes to Howell local schools, 18.63 towards Freehold Regional High School. Monmouth County's take is 12.9%, and fire districts averaged are 4.7, as well as municipal open spaces of 0.84% of your total tax bill. But that's something important to keep in mind, is that we only use 16.1% of our residents' total tax payment.
What does unexpended balance canceled mean?
Yes, so basically, if there was any balances that were left in the budget that were canceled off to fund balance, statutorily, we're required to, any debt service that we budget for, if there's anything that's unexpended at the end of the year, we have to cancel that off to surplus in the same year. When our funds that are on hand with the Monmouth County Improvement Authority for our borrowing, with that, they have it in an interest-bearing account. So as we have to pay them their principal and interest payments during the year, they offset any interest that we owe with interest that we've earned on our cash on hand. So normally, there's a little bit of
Okay.
cash left at the end of the year that just gets canceled right to fund balance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that was the status of the 2018 taxes, which lead us into 19. Just for everyone's benefit, to calculate the tax rate, the municipality calculates total cost for all services, less any offsetting revenues such as grants, user fees, money borrowed, or money transferred from reserves, to arrive at the amount to be raised by taxes. This amount is divided by the total assessment in the municipality. So as we get into what our total budget is, it's $52,300,450. which is an increase of 1.2 million over last year, or 2.42%. You'll notice our anticipated revenues are down slightly. This was reduced because of the premium received from the bond anticipation notes being reduced. And the amount to be raised by taxation in this budget would be $28,936,400. In breaking that down, most of this is non-discretionary money that is causing the increase. Of that, an increase of $915,000 is attributed to salaries, most of which through contractual obligations. The non-discretionary expenses, things such as debt service, insurance, pension, Social Security costs, that's increasing by $655,000. And the discretionary expenses, the actual areas where we can make an impact, have been reduced by $334,000. So it's a net increase of $1.235 million. Now, the sources of our revenue come from a variety of different areas. Obviously, the surplus that I had mentioned, we're using $5.8 million towards this budget. Miscellaneous revenues includes things like permits, fees, interest on investments, EMS billing, things of that nature. Our grants, this number is somewhat deceiving because we can only put in here the grant applications that we have readily available. This changes throughout the year through Chapter 159 insertions as different grants come available. Just as an indicator, our 2018 proposed budget for this was $381,000. So as you can see, it had changed quite a bit throughout the year.
So, I'm sorry.
Yes.
In looking at, miscellaneous revenues, they've not increased at all. They've almost stayed the same, almost all of them. You left them the same as 2018, but we're saying that we got surplus in. So we're increasing expenses, but we're not increasing any of the revenue?
I'm leaving the amount of the miscellaneous revenue anticipating to offset these expenditures. I'm leaving it, I left it rather flat to 2018, acting conservatively as because in any given year, you never know whether you're going to have a great year with permits, fees, things of that nature. So to, I guess, guard against a deficit in those line items, which could happen. I mean, we could actually, push that line a little bit closer, but then depending on how you finalize the year will dictate, are we still at a surplus? Are we at a deficit? And then you kind of have to write out, how you budgeted.
So before I asked if you could do, a 3-year look back for the one item, could you do a 3-year look back on all the miscellaneous to see if we've had any increases?
I actually planned on doing it for all of them for you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next is just a visual representation of our revenue that comes in. Just over half of it is accounted towards taxes, with the next highest being surplus, and then the miscellaneous revenues to account for revenue coming in. We had a significant increase in our debt service this year, and part of that was due to rolling some of our bond anticipation notes into permanent financing late in 2018. So we have an increase of just over $500,000 just for our debt service. One of the things that I was discussing with the CFO to look for in 2019 is if there's any benefit to refinancing a lot of our debt through the MCIA and taking advantage of their AAA bond rating to see if we can have realize any kind of savings there.
Didn't we just renegotiate the bonds last year?
Which,
In jog my memory here. In 2013, we refinanced the bonds that were issued in 2005. That were the bonds that acquired the Harms property and such. And last year, we just bonded a portion of our bond anticipation notes. But yes, we did do a refinancing back in 2013.
And that's reflected in this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, moving forward, and again, for the benefit of the newer council, our statutory net debt is just over $68 million. The way that's calculated is it's averaged over 3 years to come up with a valuation basis of 0.96. They take the total value of all of our ratables in town, which is the 3-year average is just over $7 trillion, and the town is allowed to borrow up to 3.5% of that. What's that? It's built. Sorry, $7 billion, and we can borrow up to 3.5% of that, and we're just under 1%. So as far as our borrowing capacity, we're well within our limits there. With this current budget, our tax rate would be 40.2 cents per $100 of assessed value. The average homeowner would see an increase of approximately $105. A little more than half of that is due to increased assessments, and the remaining portion is attributed to the tax rate with this budget. This slide was part of last year's.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yes.
I'm sorry, manager. When you say the average homeowner, what was the assessment of the house that you were using?
In 2018, the average house value was $343,500. In 2019, the average home value is $357,200. So the values have gone up, so that accounts for a portion of the increase.
So what would be the figure on a home that's evaluated presently at $600,000 on an increase? What would that increase be?
I would say if their assessment stayed flat, it would be approximately $75, and depending on how much their assessment could be, it could go up to $150. It all depends on where they're assessed. What's the same for
On
one?
approximately $600,000.
Sure, I would say I would say anywhere from $75 to $150.
Thank you. Thanks.
This slide was used during last year's presentation just to show where Howell ranked amongst other Monmouth County towns. We were number 20 as far as our municipal tax rate. So with this budget that I'm presenting to you, with the tax rate, we would then be at, I'm sorry, this is the 2018 rates. So we're still maintaining the same level. This increase is a 1.4 cent increase over the current value of 38.8 cents, sorry, from 2018. Some of the notable things in this budget are a few new positions that were requested, and I've worked with the department heads. It would include 3 police officers. Of those, 1 would be a new hire, 1 would be funded through the Safe Corridors grant, and 1 would be a replacement for an anticipated retirement later this year. We would be adding 2 Public Works maintainers and a Public Works laborer, which when DPW presents their budget, he can explain what assignments they would be handling. Plus, there's a number of part-time positions that would be included. Dispatchers, fire inspectors, DPW, police and EMS both have part-time positions added as well. So moving into our sewer utility budget, some of the notable figures here are the increase in sewer fees. A large portion of this is due to MRSA credits, which happens when we have an estimated versus actual flow. And then the increase in the number of connection fees have also contributed to our increased revenue. The status of our 2018 budget for sewer, so you know where it's coming from. And then this would be a breakdown of interest, our capital lease in total. As you can see, it's slightly decreased from last year. Of the appropriation side, there's quarterly payments to MRSA, which have been averaging just over 3% for the last 3 years. 2017, there was an increase of 3.6%, and then 2018 and 19 saw 3% per year increases for MRSA, so that accounts for a large jump in the appropriations. The balance of that is increases in debt service and Social Security. And then the proposed sewer utility budget showing revenues and expenses, and as you're aware, it has to be cost neutral, so that balances out. And then this is a depiction of our fund surplus for the sewer utility, which we'd be using $1.2 million towards this budget. And moving on to keep things flowing, I have presentations from, or some of the department heads available. First up would be the police department. Chief Kudrick was unavailable, so I have Captain Pilecki here. If you...
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Chief Kudrick sends his apologies, but due to a previous commitment, I am here instead.
So if you review the police budget, myself, the CFO, had spent quite a bit of time with Chief Kudrick, really drilling down, as the total police budget is obviously a significant part of our budget, and we worked together to really drill down and to get to where they really need versus what they want. So he made some tough choices to agree to some of these cuts. Are there any questions about his requests or any of the dollar amounts there?
I get to the page.
It's on sheet J12.
This isn't bad.
I'm looking at the wrong, these, right? The long ones.
Correct. Both the appropriation summaries were provided to you, as well as cost center summaries for each of the 3 departments that we're presenting tonight. So you have either or.
Jay, what?
J12.
I guess, one question here, Brian. I see you got the overtime down 50,000. Is that number going down year to year with the new hires, the overtime?
That's our proposal, and it has worked. With our overtime budget, we actually were down less last year than we appropriated, and it was also due to the new hires.
If I can add, I know the chief has been enacting a lot of new policies to try and cut down on overtime. And last year, when I had reviewed the previous several years' budget, this number has been continually trending downward.
That's my question.
It was well over $1 million a few years ago.
Do we happen to know what it was in 17 or 16? The overtime?
2015 was, I believe, 1.3 million, and we got it down on paper to, I think, what, 688? this year, or 668, depending on which way you look at it.
It's currently budgeted for 700,000. For 2018, there was $677,000 expended. One of the increases that you'll note is in part-time personnel. This is for our special police officers as well as part-time dispatchers, which again helps reduce our overtime costs.
Where's our Class 3s on the sheets?
The Class 3s are, I'm sorry, it's, they are included in the part-time wages.
At 300,000, which was, we were doing 300 for each year for 3 years, correct?
Yes, ma'am. There's $300,000 worth of expenditures that is budgeted in the part-time wages, and the offsetting $150,000 from the Board of Education is budgeted on the revenue side. So a net cost to the township of $150,000.
And we're in the second of our third year, correct?
I believe so, yes.
I believe that's correct.
Could you tell me what specialized expenses are? I just don't know what that means.
Well, let me give you an idea. Get my-
Do they have the budget? Do you have the budget book? Do you have the thick budget book?
You want it?
No, it's in the middle.
What,
got it
where?
Quite a few things. Has to do with our payroll software, our Power DMS, which is our policy and training,
Thank you.
which is what we use to keep all our officers up to date with the latest policies, procedures, laws, and what have you. Accreditation, we have certain amount of money we need to do for that in order to keep the police department accredited. Every 3 years, we go through a process again. Self-reporting, the kiosk that we have, which we purchased earlier, it should be going into effect shortly, which people can report any type of incidents or anything right in the lobby. It frees up an officer on the road. The battery-worn cameras, we just completely updated that now, last year with putting in the latest software that we had and the latest type of equipment. Our exposure, as far as bloodborne pathogens, the training for that to keep everybody up to date on communicable diseases and what have you. Drug screening supplies, Easy Pass account, petty cash, funds for narcotic buys.
Kevin, you don't have to go. Thank
All
you.
right.
They
I'm not sure if you had it.
Jim
ma'am.
showed me where, yeah, thank you.
So what he does is he lists everything here. So like that's all.
Kevin, every officer now has, every road officer has a camera, correct?
Every road officer, patrol officer that goes on the road now has a camera.
Okay.
Yes.
The overview, the front.
Yeah, Lou puts this together to give you an idea of what changed.
Does anybody have any questions?
I guess that the employee health benefits, they went down 34,000. Is that from just the change from Direct 15 to Direct 10? Is that,
I'm not sure.
That's part and parcel of it, yes.
that's all?
34,000?
Okay.
They're,
It's a reduction from somebody retiring, is it?
Our total employee health benefits, which is in the cost center above the police department, actually decreased almost 138,000, and that had to do with some of our bargaining units switching from Direct 10 to Direct 15. Some employees no longer here, so not taking the benefits, so it's part and parcel.
Brian, can you highlight the key changes that were made the last time we received this packet? This is about a month and a half ago. The key changes that were made compared to the packet that we received a month and a half ago to now.
Yeah, if you look on the J sheets, the long sheets, about 2/3 of the way over, there's manager and council adjustments.
I see that.
It's all the numbers in red. That's all the cuts that have been made. It's been an ongoing process, so
The total cuts.
for the police department, in working with the chief, we have reduced the police department $385,907 from their request for 2019.
Okay.
So there's still an increase of approximately $381,000 over last year. A big part of that is salaries.
And most are contractual, correct? Like you said?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So Brian, in the binder, when it said budget message and it had all the bullet points,
So when you get that, that is everything that in this case, the chief of police has requested for 2019.
correct?
He justifies different expenditures that he's looking to make or new projects, that kind of thing. And that's what we began working off of back late last year.
So my question is, there's stuff in here that was given to us in the binder that you took out, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Because I did highlight some things, but I don't see them on this, so I'm guessing you made that change.
Okay. I can try and answer that for you if you...
That's okay. So one of the things I highlighted here was the mounted unit that was on here, is it?
Yes, that was removed.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you. So a couple of things that on here, that I don't see on here, I can assume that they were removed from the budget.
Yes, they're generally reflected as dollar changes. in the
Okay,
J-
I'm not going to see it like line item like that, but I'll see a reflection in,
Correct.
okay.
How we normally do it is the column that says department request is the book as it's existing,
Okay,
as it was provided to the governing body, and then any cuts that we make, the manager and myself, that is reflected in the column that's next to it. It's just such a tedious process to go back and
itemize it like that.
reconfigure and itemize it,
May I? And where are we on the radio maintenance? Every year we're putting more money into the radios. Are these is this the project we started 2 years ago that we're still working on?
I don't know where you're putting the money in, other than right now, we're coming up to the point where we're almost 100% of personnel where we've distributed the radios that we did when we did that $1.3 million project.
Right.
That $1.3 million project is still a work in progress. I've withheld $120,000 from Motorola, which is still there, because I have 2 or 3 issues which I haven't resolved as of yet. I'm meeting with them this week to try to finalize that and get that done so that can be taken care of. But as far as any radio expenses, I know some of the radio expenses were for EMS, which EMS wanted to get on our same bandwidth and our same radio frequency as the police in order to work better together. So I know there was some request for radio equipment then to bring them up to date. As far as the PD, I have integrated in there, back when we did that $1.3 million proposal, a 3-year warranty program. So it's not costing us anything for 3 years. We still obviously have maintenance for our older radios and what have you, but that's only about $39,000, I think, a year, or $38,000 a year. I'm not sure what that is for that radio maintenance budget. And that's needed there because some of the radios for the SLEO 3s, we're using our old radios for that. The fire department, stuff like that, which we have to maintain. That's what that is for.
So EMS came in on your band, on the PD band, correct?
EMS works actually on 2 bands because they have to. They get dispatched on VHF. They actually have, what we did is we repurposed our old frequency to utilize for the EMS units. And the reason we did that is because there was connectivity problems and communications problems between the EMS units throughout the township, and it created an issue. So we basically repurposed our old units to let them use them, and it's worked out very well. And as far as them, they have to talk to different people. They go out of town on mutual aid agreements. They have to have a radio that is like a tri-band, because in Freehold, they got to talk on UHF, or they got to talk on whatever. If they talk to county, they have to talk on the 700 or the high band. So we brought them up to date. Instead of being antiquated, they're up to date, or currently up to date, or almost up to date.
Are we using any of the county bands?
Negative.
None of the county
The
bands?
problem with the county bands is that, they didn't want us on it right away just as a single entity. And when I looked into this 3 years ago or 4 years ago when I first started, the cheapest way to do this was through the New Jersey Public Safety Intercommunications Band, which is 700, which is why we bought the radios. Now, the radios are compatible with the county. However, I have a $50 million system that I'm only paying $13,000 a year to use. And the state keeps it up to date. The only thing I have to keep up to date is my infrastructure, my portables, my mobile radio units. And that's built in when I first bought this, at least the first 3 years, is free. So anything happens, the radio gets run over, you throw it in the water, whatever else, whatever happens to it.
Well, let's not do that,
they give-
yeah.
No, I don't want to do that either. But notwithstanding, to have, if I were to try to, back 3 or 4 years ago, I need a new system for the township itself and just a standalone system, it would be anywhere from $6 to $10 million, depending on it, because you can't get the lower frequencies now. You have to be either 700 or 800. Some people are going higher. And as you go higher in the frequency structure, you need more infrastructure. Well, I'm not paying for any infrastructure. I'm paying $13,000 a year for all the infrastructure around here, and they maintain it, they upgrade it. Any issues with respect to our radios, if it's compatibility, they have to take care of it. So it's like a home run for the town. It saves a lot of money.
And as we upgrade to as we go to higher bands, how are we doing with the antennas that we have? Are we in good shape, or are we going to be looking at something else
And
soon?
again, this is the New Jersey state system. This is a system which the state operates. They develop the infrastructure. There's a place in Wall. We don't have anything in this town now. Down the road, the town or us or the state may decide we need a antenna site in Howell Township. Now, whether they decide to do it on their own land, say on 195 or Route 9 or whatever, or if we decide to do it and do an interoperable agreement and save money between both ways, they're always looking. They're always looking to expand. They're looking to expand into Ocean County. We got in pretty well on the beginning of it, and I think we're doing very well. We have a couple issues, radio problem issues, but it's a radio. It's not, it's not a landline, it's not a phone. People got to realize, just like your cell phone,
Right.
it's a radio. And there are going to be areas where you're going to have issues. We have 95%, anywhere from 90 to 95% connectivity, which is great. The 5%, what are we going to do? It's like anything else, like your cell phone. You go down the road, you lose a call.
So the chief I would consider that like a negligible kind of a percentage, but, so the chief is comfortable with that? We're good we're good in those terms?
At this point, yes.
Okay.
There's always room for improvement.
I
If
agree.
if I had the wish list,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, let's do this or let's do that, but I don't. And looking at the information that the chief gave me with respect to the budget, we've really cut a lot of stuff here. We cut out a dispatcher, our calls for service, and also, picking up other calls from other towns and whatever else has gone up significantly since 2008, and we haven't even changed our dispatcher. But we're willing to, instead of getting a full-time dispatcher, we're doing per diems. And we're trying to hire so many per diems to try to circumvent that of hiring a full-time dispatcher with the benefits and whatever else. So we're trying to work with you. Same thing with patrol officers. I'd love to have 100 officers. Back in 2008, 2009, we had 99 officers. We're down to 91, and we're going to lose another one in when Nancy goes, Detective Carroll, going to be down to 90 officers. The town is getting bigger, it ain't getting any smaller. And, you know, we'd love to have 100 guys, but, you know, we are actually, I think, by ordinance and I think by state police can go up to 111. That would be great too, but obviously.
I'm familiar with that, yeah. Do you want to speak to the hires?
Could I
I'm
just want to
sorry.
ask one question
Sure.
that was still on. Is there a way with dispatch, is there a way for you to quantify, just, I guess, because information for me, I like to look at data, quantify how many calls that are outside of Howell from, let's say, 2015, 16, or 16, 17, 18, just to see how much it's increased, or if it has increased?
With due respect, ma'am, can I abdicate to my senior dispatcher, Steve Garrity?
Sure, if it's got the data.
I think he may.
Come on up, Steve.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We call them 911 overflow calls.
Okay,
We break them into two categories. One is the county overflows that are specific to Monmouth County, and then we have other agency overflows. So between our, for last year in 2018, we had 1,370 other agency overflows. Monmouth County, we had 4,670 for a total of 6,040. That's in 2018. 2016, I just have the figures for the county overflow.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I have both here. They're just not broken out. County is 3,159, and with the other agencies, it brought it to 4,791. In 2015, I'm missing 2015, but
well, I mean, it's increasing. You have
Yes,
14, just to
yes,
ask, just to
yes.
see?
I'm sorry?
Do you have another, 14 with you?
Yes. 2014 was 4,323 for Monmouth County. Other agencies brought it up to 5,156. So far this year, for the first 2 months of the year, we're at 609 for Monmouth County and 219 for other agencies, for a total of 828 just for January and February alone.
That's not inclusive the 75,000 calls we get just on a regular basis for Howell Township.
For last year,
As in non-emergency?
for 2018, we took in 81,144 non-emergency calls, 25,000 911 calls, for a total of 106,145. We also monitored, because we keep track of our radio transmissions, because they have to listen to the radio transmissions, 164,702 for the police, 15,000 for fire, and 35,000 for EMS. And we dispatched 61,000 calls for service, 61,561 calls for service.
God bless you. Interesting.
But who's counting?
Can
Who's
I,
counting?
can I ask a question? Being new up here on the council, has shared services been looked at for county 911 dispatching?
Want to address that?
I believe it's being.
I'm sorry,
looked at.
should I have addressed that to you, town manager? I'm sorry.
I believe it has been researched in the past. Having some contacts at the county as well, I know it would be a huge undertaking for the county to take on the volume and the unique geography of Howell, you know, being so large. I have been discussing with the chief about the potential of maybe doing a hybrid program, if the county would be agreeable to that, where basically we would keep our dispatchers, but working off the county system So that would help benefit some of our infrastructure costs that we're currently maintaining on our own. But that's for down the road to look into. But I definitely know it would be a huge undertaking for both Howell and the county to make such a switch.
Well, I mean, with 4,600 calls last year that we took up for the county,
Right.
how could we go into the county if we're helping them? Doesn't make any sense.
There's different aspects, and I respect that, ma'am. And I know the chief has been, we've discussed this, again, hybrid schedule, if that, whatever, 3 or 4 years ago, or even 5 years ago, whatever it was.
We did extensive
We
research
did extensive
about
research
2,
on
3
that.
years ago.
And if you wanted to keep these same services, there were certain things that the county could not provide for us to keep the same structure. We have anywhere from 2 to 3, actually on days and evenings, we have 3 telecommunicators on. On evenings, we have 2 telecommunicators. Since we're a PSAP and we're an overflow establishment for the county, if we only had one dispatcher or one dispatcher gets tied up with a county overflow call or a 911 and it's an EMD, which means they're providing emergency medical dispatch instructions, that takes away, and for how long that you're going to handle that call. It could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 or 15 minutes until help gets there. And in that time, with an overflow call, in that case, you still have to contact county. Hey, I have an overflow call, it's an EMD. Hopefully try to, while you're trying to give instructions, you need to get county to get the right first aid or fire company to the scene out of our town. So now if you have one dispatcher now, or 2 dispatchers, now there's only 1. Now if you have anywhere from 6 to 12 or 14 officers on the road that are doing, and our guys are proactive, you see them on the road. I go down the road and I'm amazed. You know, I see my guys, they're everywhere. It's omnipresence. And omnipresence equals people saying, well, geez, I'm not going to try to do anything in this town. I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to try to break in anything or anything like that because they see our guys. Our guys stop anywhere from 40 to 60 cars, sometimes on a tour, or even, even more during the total course of a day. To have what county has right now, which they have call takers and call dispatchers, our dispatchers do everything. They do the same thing. If I handle the call and I'm a dispatcher in Howell Township, I'm going to answer the call and I'm going to dispatch right to the police officers that are going to the call. If I have a hot domestic, all right, I have a domestic at such and such place, this is what's going on, and it's a play-by-play, all right? My officers are interactions with the person who's getting the direct information. Monmouth County has a different type of thing. They have call takers and dispatchers. So you have a call taker, yeah, what's going on? Okay, they take the information, put it on the computer, it gets sent to a call handler or dispatcher. Now he dispatches, or she dispatches that to the respective department or whatever else. Now the officer on the scene, hey, what's going on with, can you give me a further update? They're not on the phone with this person. They got to go back to another thing or call the person back, whatever. Saves it. It wastes a lot of time. Now, there's advantages to both, obviously, but in our situation where we have proactive police officers and doing a lot of stops and everything like that, at this current time, our type of dispatching is the most beneficial as far as my personal. I've been here 39 years, all right? Don't hold it against me, okay? But having had this dispatch and having been a dispatcher, okay, because in my early years I had a dispatch and whatever, it's my opinion, just my opinion, that if it ain't broke, you don't fix it, with all due respect. And I realize certain things you may be able to recoup certain monies and whatever else, but that's going to be down the road. It's not a quick, thing. And how much are you going to recoup if, in fact, you go, say, decide to do these shared services and eliminate certain things? You eliminate something, you may have to put that money to something else. Like if we eliminate, just say if you eliminate dispatchers, you're going to have to keep somebody inside the station. That's going to have to increase our patrol or amount of patrol officers that we have to. We may have to go up to 110 officers just to keep an officer in the station 24/7, whereas the dispatchers now are in the station 24/7. Somebody comes in, they're greeted by a dispatcher, not a phone, not this or anything like that. And we want to maintain that. We maintain that type of service. And again, call me whatever, but I like the way our dispatchers are. I'm proud of them. They do a great job. Our guys are happy. They call in a stop, they get heard right away, they don't have any delay. Most of our dispatchers run the person or the registered owner right away, so the officer comes on, what's the status? They tell them right away, whereas you may have to ask for more things, and it creates a delay. And conceivably, if there's so much delay, maybe guys will stop less cars because, you know what? I'm not getting the service that I need. So we have a great police department, we've got great dispatchers, great patrol. Yeah, I'm blowing my horn, but you know what? I've seen it for 39 years, and it's the truth. All right, and thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
One quick question. With all this overflow, we're the backup to the county. Who's the backup to Howell?
County.
County,
That's like the chicken and the egg.
yeah.
Yeah. With the per diems, again, we've eliminated the one dispatch. I would love to have 11 dispatchers. I realize the township is in straits. So what do? We get per diems. We hire people that are trained, just like our regular dispatchers, and they work per diem, saves the benefits packages that they don't have to pay. They work, less than 30 hours a week or whatever else. And we still can put people on to cover the shifts, to have at least 2 or 3 people on at all times. So it's a win-win for the township.
I just want to get a clarification, because I'm not sure if what I heard is what you said.
I'm not sure what I said is what you heard.
When an officer stops a vehicle, I thought they had a computer in the car. They can run the plate and everything themselves.
There's certain things that you can get in the car, and there's certain things that the people in
The
the station
dispatch.
can get. When you run a random stop in a police car, there's only certain stuff that can come up on there pursuant to law. However, if the officer wants to investigate further, he contacts the police department, the dispatcher, and say, I want you to run this person all around. That means warrants, CCH, criminal history, which you can't do on there because you have to sign for them and stuff like that.
So that's literally motor vehicle-related information that's in the car.
Well, motor vehicle relate in the car and certain like warrants, certain things. But if you want to get a true and a comprehensive
True
type of
picture.
investigation on a person, our dispatcher runs them through NCI, CIC, AOC, ATS, ACS. There's so many things that they run.
That's enough initials for me, yeah. No, I
Everything
was
has
not.
to be
yeah.
confirmed. Everything has to be confirmed by the dispatcher. So if there's a warrant, just because it says that on a screen, it still has to be confirmed by dispatch, who has to, notify the other agencies and do some further work.
I wasn't aware of that. I thought everything that the officer needed was right on that computer.
No.
So,
That's only in
interesting.
fantasy land.
I saw it on television, so I was certain it was true.
had to be
Yeah.
right.
Had to be right.
NCIS,
right.
or what was it?
Thanks, thank you for that clarification.
Are there any other questions for Captain?
Okay,
Were we going to talk about the hires? I'm sorry.
Sure.
It was up on the screen. One was replacement.
Yeah, originally, the chief, I think, was asking for 5 officers originally.
Okay.
I guess at this year. With respect to that, there would be one replacement, that would be a new replacement. One would be funded by the Safe Corridors grant, which we have. And then the other would be funded upon a retirement, I believe, of Detective Carroll, she's currently going to be going out soon. Chief had asked me to bring up the fact that we had in one point a 2-for-1 situation here where when one person retires, 2 people get hired. Nancy Carroll's estimated salary was about $140 or something if you add benefits or whatever in there. Whereas if she leaves a certain time, we could hire 2 at $30-some thousand or $40,000 apiece plus benefits. The town would still realize a savings, notwithstanding the fact that we would be able to put our newer people on. We get 2 people for the price of 1, and the town would still realize some savings for the time being. I think it's appropriate with the fact that, considering, again, as I brought out 2008, 2009, we were 99 people, now we're down to 91, and there's a lot of things going on in this town. We got 55,000 plus people, you got 17,000 homes, You got more stuff going in, you got a new warehouse, you got new developments going in.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the average state police basically says you're supposed to have, I think, 2.5 officers per thousand, and we're in the 1.7 or 1.5 to 1.7 range right now. I don't know, depending on what population you use or whatever else. With all due respect, I would request, and on behalf of the chief, some consideration with respect to that ratio of 2 to 1 or whatever you can do with that.
And that safe corridor money, that is how much for a hire? Do we know that? Do we have that figure?
I don't have the total amount. Lou, how much do we get a year for that?
It was, well, we had about $75,000 on hand from previous years' Safe Corridors grants that typically we had used for equipment. And upon discussion with the manager and the chief, we had decided to, use these Safe Corridors grants to offset salaries, which is allowable under the grant requirements. And I don't know that we've been awarded our 2019 allocation yet, but as soon as we're notified, then I put it into the budget.
So then this is prefaced on the safe corridor money, the 75K from a previous award.
Yes, ma'am.
And that covers the entire salary for the one replacement captain?
Well, depends on where you hire. Then you got pension and benefits and,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they're just starting out.
Yes, it would cover a probationary officer
Right.
plus benefits.
Got it.
Absolutely.
How much is the grant for? Let's say for 2019, is it a specified amount, or?
As I said, we had about $75,000 that was on hand.
No, I'm just wondering, what did we apply for 19?
I can inquire with the officer who handles
I believe
that.
that's in relation to, ma'am, Mayor Berger, with respect to the summonses issued in the safe corridor area, too. Route 9 and Route 33, certain areas are designated as safe corridors, so there is an enhanced penalty due to the fact that certain, hazardous violations, speeding, reckless driving, careless driving, there's an enhanced penalty in those areas, and I believe that safe corridor money gets funded by that. I can't really answer. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. There's really no specific.
well, we don't see that. We won't get that answer, until September, October, somewhere in there? Typically?
By the time we get our allocation for this year, our budget for this year would most likely be adopted, so then we can add it to the budget for this year, because it's what we would be adding in revenue anticipated would equal the appropriations that we would be technically
Well, anytime
spending.
money comes in, I know we just add it right in. I mean, we usually don't see that until late summer, early fall.
Correct, yes.
Correct?
It's, if we were to get this grant, chances are it would be after this budget was adopted, but as I say, we have the ability through the Chapter 159 process to add it to the budget, and then we would absolutely be able to offset it against anything for the 2020 budget as
Understood.
well.
I think I'm good.
Anything else?
Nothing.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you,
very
gentlemen.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Public Works.
What page?
On your long sheets, it would start on page J15, towards the bottom.
Please. Good afternoon.
Do you have any questions, or how would you like to go about this?
What was it, Jay? Thank you.
What J sheet are you on?
One thing to note with Public Works encompasses several different cost centers. One thing to note is Buildings and Grounds Cost Center. Formerly, we never had any salaries attributed to that line. This year, to try and better capture where people are working, we've reallocated a portion of the public works salaries to that line. So that's why you don't see it budgeted for in previous years.
We moved it out of the road department and put it into buildings and grounds where it really should be.
That's another section full.
Well, we always had the section, we just didn't have any.
in our notebook,
Oh,
in our magic notebook.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find it, Paul. Hang on tight.
J sheets.
Bear with me.
And again, much like the police department, myself, Paul, and Brian, and Lou have met several times to see where we could tighten the belt a little bit more, and, identifying certain areas where we could operate a little more efficiently, so.
Everybody's looking, may I, Mayor?
Please.
Okay. Just my own information. Tables and chairs for Echo Lake Pavilion, inside the building? Tables, chairs, in the building itself, correct?
That was under capital, and we pulled that out to try to get different funding for that. And that will be tables, folding tables, folding chairs, and a small shed to store them outside. The reason we want to do this is when we rent out Echo Lake Pavilion, let's say on a Saturday, usually the rental company drops the chairs and tables off on a Friday, picks them up on a Monday, so we can only rent the building out once. This way, if we have everything on site, the residents, it's kind of a service to the residents, we can rent the tables and chairs out to them. Let's say they have a party Friday night, we can run it again Saturday. So I think we can increase the rental amount, rental times to the residents and offer them a service also.
Are we doing pretty decently on that horizon, on rental of the building itself? Or have we been limited because of the table chair
I think we're running out
situation?
a fair amount, but I think we can probably double it.
Do we rent that space?
Yes,
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
What types of events occur there?
there's parties.
Just parties?
Weddings.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yes,
Very nice.
it's a beautiful pavilion.
It's used quite a bit. It's running out quite a bit.
Paul, how many full-time employees do you have?
We have 52 total.
And you're looking for 6 more?
I was asking for 6, we dropped it down to 3, and if you'd like to, the reason we're asking for increased employees, back in 1983, there was 47 workers in DPW. There was also, I think, 11,000 houses, residences. Since then, we've increased it up to 117,000 residences, I think an increase of 54%. We have a lot more responsibility, a lot more roads, a lot more infrastructure. I think we're being held to a higher standard with all the electronic submissions. People can submit a work order in electronically. We still have 47 employees.
What would these 3 individuals do?
The 3 individuals right now, the ones we've kept on the books, one would run our pothole truck. It sounds kind of weird, but we have a very high-tech piece of equipment that single-handedly fills potholes. The driver never leaves the seat of the cab. If you drive around town, you see the kind of like white-looking pothole patches that have been there for a few years. Those are done by the pothole truck. The other 2, I'd like to get a maintainer and a laborer to basically run our vac truck and our camera truck, go around town inspecting inlets, cleaning inlets all the time. We've got a ton of stormwater infrastructure in this town, and needs to be maintained and inspected on a recurring basis.
Presently, with the stormwater situation, those inspections, how do you feel, I know that these inspections are probably done in a timely manner, in that it's weather permitting, the time of the year, that type of thing, but out of 100% of the basins, do you feel that you can get to all 100% every year? Or do you
No.
feel that you're always playing catch-up?
No. And you're not required to do, get to every inlet every year. Let me see.
I mean, usually I would say probably, some flooding someplace, draws our attention to it, but we're hopeful not to.
We've got about 3,000, a little over 3,000 inlets. If you actually go in, look inside and work in every 5 years to actually fully pull a lid, go in and inspect, that's 680 a year. That's how I came up with the two-man crew working pretty much full-time doing those.
So you're speaking to going into it, actually,
They're gonna go,
got you.
they
Okay.
go out, when they're out and about, if there's leaves on the inlets, they clear them out. But I'm talking about going in, popping the lid, looking inside, checking to see if the block is starting to crumble, if the grate got hit by a plow or something, and it's cracked. You can also start to see, if you start to see dirt coming in, you could have a breach of the inlet or the casting or the nearby pipe, which is going to lead to a sinkhole.
Yeah, I think when you first said it, we may have thought it was just a matter of, you drive by and observe to see if there's leaves covering and something, less intense. So you're really speaking to actual examination, going in and actually examining the
Yes,
area.
yes. And
Yeah.
repairing them
Well,
as
yeah.
they see it. And also, we have the camera truck that
Oh, that's right.
go out and videotape the pipes.
Forgot about the camera truck. That's right.
How many trucks did we get last year?
I think last year we got two. We got two 8-yard dumps with a brine tank and plow. This year, we purchased a tandem. We just couldn't finalize that.
We haven't gotten that yet, have we?
No. that's it.
Okay.
Takes a while to fit it up. You get the frame and basically the cab, and then it goes from there.
Hurry up and wait. Yeah.
Just asking. Would we transport custodial staff?
Yes, ma'am. We have 2 nighttime custodians that goes from DPW garage, and he hits town hall, he hits the library, he hits PD, they, I should say, we have more than one, town hall. So they're out and about. The day staff carries, garbage bags, cleaning supplies. And the van I'm talking about is 2 seats and an empty back, basically.
Mayor, if I may, I have not made any adjustments yet to the capital requests. I was
Okay.
just concentrating on the operating budget
Okay.
for this point, since we're
I'll back away.
under
Sorry.
the timeline for that to introduce.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Not me.
No?
I'm good.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Paul.
And then the last major department that I have here is community development. So Jim Herman will be,
My man.
More paper. No, we're killing trees here. Which J pages?
Actually, it's the information starts on J6.
All right, so the sheets I just gave you, I usually like to do an overall summary of my department because I have 5 different cost centers. So that's the problem with the budgets, the way they're broken out by statute, is we have to have separation. So I usually just put them together for you to give you an overall. So if you look at the sheet, the first sheet that I gave you, the 2018 versus 2019 operating budget, okay, that has all 5 cost centers, shows our salaries and wages separated from our expenses, and it gives you the overview for the whole department. So we're just over 2.07 million versus 2.04 million for 2018 versus 2019. Mostly the salaries are very close. There were contractual raises that we obviously had for our staff. You don't really see a lot of that reflected because we reallocated some of our staff salary to the sewer utility because we're spending massive amounts of time working with the sewer department recently, mainly the Freewood Acres project and a couple other big items that we're working on together. So a lot of my time, a lot of my staff time has been spent supplementing the sewer utility. So we felt it was appropriate to transfer over some of those costs to the utility as per statute allows. So we did that. The second sheet, I know you guys like to look back and see where you've been. Every year I provide with a 6-year review, right? Because how can you get a gauge unless you've looked back? So the data gets better and better every year. In the first few years there, I didn't have a lot of data because I wasn't here, and let's say it was in 1,000 different places. But most recently, it's all shown, so you can see where we've been budget-wise, salaries, wages, also expenses. So our expenses have gone down for the most part, with the exception of this year. You see some increases in the expenses this year over last year. Wages have gone up. We've hired some people over the last few years to supplement some of our departments where we needed to.
Jim, could you explain, from 2000, let's say 14 and 15, right? Our totals were going up, and then 16 and 17, we dropped down. Could you explain that, the reason?
On which totals?
So on the 6-year comparison.
Okay,
So if you take a look at engineering,
yep,
so if you look at, 14, 15, it looked like we're trending up, and then 16 and 17, we totally trended down.
we lost staff.
Okay,
Lost staff and they weren't replaced.
okay.
So that, that's kind of that's the anomaly you'll see is mainly in engineering.
That's why, yes.
In engineering, in 2008, there was, I think, 10 or 11 full-time staff members. Now there are 3 full-time, myself giving some of my time, and my new deputy director giving some of his time. So, that just goes to show you how down we are compared to old days. And I'm not saying we need to get back there. I'd love to have, let's say, 2 or 3 more people in engineering. With the deputy manager hat on, I see what happens to the budget and know what you can and can't ask for. So being realistic, I don't think we can ask for a whole lot. The difference with engineering, though, is the escrow accounts. So the best thing to do is flip to the last page. This gives you a 6-year comparison of our fee intake. It's actually a 7-year comparison because I wanted to kind of show you where we're at year to date already. So those are all the different types of fees or violations or permits or whatever else you want to call it that we collect or generate. So I broke it down by cost center so you can see the different violations. So for instance, in 2018, our code enforcement officers wound up collecting $112,000 in fines. And that's for varieties of things, property maintenance, grass, people that don't move their car during a snowstorm off the street. Then we have rental certificates, landlord registrations. A couple years ago when we did hire a few extra staff to replace some retirements, we got some more efficient people. We were better at tracking down landlords, things like that. We had a lot of illegal rentals in town. Quite frankly, I think we still do. That's a product of us finding them and doing what we can to bring them into compliance when we find them. Abandoned property registries, you'll notice in 2018 we had 87,000 in abandoned property registries. 2017 was 106,000. So that's one of those fees that Lou anticipates that you referred to earlier. So that's a product of more houses being renovated and flipped by the banks that own them. So when a bank, forecloses on the property and eventually they sell it, it comes off the property registry. So it's actually a good thing that those numbers are coming down for the township because it's showing that we're actually improving the township rather than going the wrong way. Less revenue to us, but we would rather have less revenue in that because that means there's less problems out there. So as you go through, you'll see 2014 was a banner year for construction building department fees, right? So, I'm not sure we're going to get back up to that number within the next few years. It depends on major projects. That was the year that BJ's was constructed, and that had a very large permit fee associated with the BJ's because of the size and the volume of the building. But we've been kind of holding steady around the $1.3 million mark in construction fees. We did take a hit a little bit with the loss of roofs, sidings, a lot of the minor work permits that the state decided to change on us last year. However, we did update our fees to be a little more in line with today's times. That hasn't been updated in, I don't know, it was probably 10 years. So we went average, middle of the road on just about everything, and we're still right around that $1.3 million mark for building department fees.
With the increases that we have to
Yeah, they've already taken effect, correct. So engineering, you can see engineering kind of varies greatly. A lot of that depends on what utility companies out there decide to do major projects. If a utility company has a major project that has a major road opening fee or a reimbursement for something, in years past, the water company has reimbursed us for our own contractor to pay for paving or things of that nature when they're replacing mains. So we typically work with them. That number's kind of all over the map. And then land use and engineering, or land use and zoning. If you'll notice the planning board application fee in 2019, year to date, compare that back, see where we're at. That's actually due to one project that came in that had a very large fee. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is, down south end of town. So that fee pretty much surpassed all of what we collected last year. So we're going to be a little higher this year on those fees. Okay. So overall, you'll see we took in about $2.1 million in 2018. I give you a comparison at the bottom, comparing our total operating budget versus what our intake just in permit fees are. And you'll see there's a balance usually every year, and that balance was about $227,000 last year. Now, that's just a napkins rough number that is not set in stone. That does not account for pensions and all the other costs of an employee, but straight salary versus the permit fees we take in is those numbers. And then back to the engineering, look at the very last section, engineering, planning, and zoning, the consultant escrow inspections. Last year there was $546,000 that were done by outside consultants. That's for the planning and zoning boards. So the board each board has their own professionals, and I don't want to take any of that. It's a major project. I mean, I would probably need to hire 2 to 3 people just to even come close to that. So I don't want to do that. But one thing you could do as a revenue in the future is talk about inspections. You know, we pay outside consultants to do inspections of all these site plans and subdivisions. If there was ever an opportunity to take some of that and do it in-house with another employee, I don't have the staff right now. I mean, I invite you guys all to come in one day and kind of sit in my office and see what goes on through my outside office there. But something to think about if we ever wanted to talk about bringing another person in-house and doing some of the inspections in-house. I think it would benefit us, it would benefit the town, and then that person would be able to do other things in the
How many
meantime.
inspections do we do?
Thousands. 20, I want to say last year was 26,000 inspections.
And one person can do 26,000?
No, that was through probably 8 people.
Can they do a portion of the inspections, and can we sub out the rest? Is that,
We do that now.
okay.
So right now, when an application goes to the Planning and Zoning Board and it gets approval, it comes back to our office for all the final paperwork, and then it gets released for construction. So during construction, we use a consultant to allow them to, or we use a consultant to make sure that the developer builds the project in accordance with the approved plan. Okay, so the building permits are separate, that still comes through my office, but all the engineering site work, the road improvements, the utility improvements, all that is overseen by outside consultants. That's money we would be able to bill to those escrow accounts. So if I had an employee, we can bill double their salary to that escrow account. You know, outside consultants can bill whatever their pre-approved rates are. So our rates are usually lower. A lot of developers would probably appreciate it if we had in-house staff doing it because it would cost them less. But it also has a pension cost, a healthcare cost, and everything else along with it. I've run the analysis to death. You know, you basically have to be about 70% or more billable, what I call billable for the year. So if 70% of someone's time was billed to escrow accounts, it would cover their full cost, including pension, benefits, the whole nine. But that's a decision on impacting our operating budget, right? So I can't assume those numbers to that point ahead of time. I can only assume certain things. So that would be an increase in the overall operating budget. So,
Pam, could you just clarify for me? When we have an application come in, planning or zoning, our escrow fees, am I to believe that we don't put in those escrow fees presently, the final site review for our people going out?
yes, so there's pieces in there for us in the middle, but we don't really do that because we don't have the staff to do it.
So are we not billing enough on those escrow fees when we go out?
It's
for
not
outside consult?
it's not about billing enough, it's having the staff to do it.
Bless you.
But did I understand? All right, I'm missing something. So you're telling me, or I'm asking you rather, we're hiring an outside agency to go do the inspection? Because we
Correct.
can't do it all.
Correct.
So if our outside agency, and I'm just going to, a number, if it's a $3,000 inspection fee, I mean, we don't.
It's an escrow, so whatever hours
Oh, it
they
is an
bill.
escrow.
It's an escrow account.
So it's not really, we're not paying it, they're paying it.
Correct. The developers are paying it.
So when
It's-
I look at this amount, this is money in, money out, but not
Correct.
our money, their
Correct.
money.
That is correct.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, just hearing the conversation, it sounds like we're paying, you know.
No.
I know that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I want to be clear that that's money that comes in with the applications. You know, it's part of the fee. For
Correct.
people who wanna
The
do
way I look at
business.
it is, you know, chances to improve the township's revenue, right? So if I told you that at 70% billable, my staff member, if I had one, would cover his full cost plus benefits. If he was 80% billable, well, that's 10% of his cost that we just brought into the town instead of giving to a consultant. That's all. It's just but you have to remember, right now, times are good, okay?
Right.
If the economy turns and things get slow and we don't have the inspections to cover that, well,
Right.
there's nobody to lay off. You know, we just
Right.
tell the consultant there's no work, and they're fine, and they go away and figure something else out to do. That's the problem with hiring a full-time employee. If the economy turns badly, and
Exactly.
we've seen it before, you know, then that's how you get in trouble.
No, exactly, yeah.
So,
No,
it's all
I-
just
I'm with you.
points of interest.
So Jim, we don't have in-house inspectors at all for that?
I have one.
You have one, and how much
I have a
could
couple
he-
engineering aides that are actually in the twilight of their career and will be retiring this year. So I do have some replacements scheduled in my budget to replace them. They are extremely knowledgeable 35-year employees. So
Wow.
I'm budgeting, you'll see it in here, I'm budgeting to actually bring people in like a half a year early, because these are not people I can just let them go on December 31st and have a new person start January 2nd. There's just no way. There's so much institutional knowledge we're going to lose this year when those two people retire. And then I have a younger engineering staffer who does inspections, but he handles everything right now. So he handles everything from road opening inspections to pool inspections to plot plan inspections. I currently have him working on the patch program. I don't know if you've noticed around town, you'll see areas that are marked out or areas that have been milled and paved by L&L Paving. They were the contractor that won the bid this year to do that. And these are things that are beyond DPW's capability. It's no longer a pothole. We can't just keep throwing cold patch in the same hole 25 times. You know, we have to mill it out and patch it right. Well, he's managing the whole thing, and he's doing excellent at it. Like I said, I could probably take 2 more inspectors, quite frankly.
How many inspections do they do a day, average?
I'd have to get that for you.
Okay.
That's all over the place.
Well, I guess it would be different if it was
It
a
all
full
depends on the
inspection.
paperwork, too.
Right.
But, you know, I try to run it as best I can like
Mm-hmm.
a business, and they do very well at it. I just wish I had more, but I understand. So that's kind of overall where we're at. Now, if you look at, let's see here. Oh, I already went over that. Okay, so that's basically it on the 6-year comparisons.
Thank you for that, actually, I really did enjoy that, thank you.
Are you sure? Don't lie.
I so loved it.
Jim, this new line item, abandoned property maintenance landscape contract, is $20,000. Is that something we could bill out to the banks?
Let's see here. Yes, so we do still have abandoned properties in town, okay? And there are actually abandoned properties that are not owned by banks. So they're truly abandoned, meaning that there was no mortgage on it, the person has passed away, there's no next of kin that want to take ownership of it, and they sit there, and they sit there, and they sit there, and they rot. So we have issues with having DPW go over and try to board them up. The grass is not being maintained, you know, and we've been through this, I can't tell you how many times, multiple meetings where we're trying to figure out a better way. We need a better mousetrap. The problem is when someone calls to complain about someone's grass not being mowed or something like that, we issue them immediately a violation letter. That letter gives them 10 days to comply because that's what our ordinance requires. And if they don't do it after 10 days, then we issue a ticket. Well, that ticket then has to get heard at court. Well, guess what? Court's not for another 3 weeks after the 2 weeks that we gave them to rectify the situation. So at a minimum, you're 5 weeks out after someone complains. So if someone complained on June 1st, they're not even in court until July 10th, right? You're talking about a third of the summer's already gone through, and the grass is now 3 feet high instead of 1.5 feet high. So we've talked about DPW going over and mowing it. In some very, very rare occasions, we've had to do that because we just couldn't look the other way anymore. But there's a process. There's a process of putting a lien on the property. It takes time and effort for multiple different people here, township attorney, township tax collector, selling it at a lien sale. So there's a lot of effort that goes into it. So we're trying to find a better way to do this. We're thinking what we want to do with this is hire a landscaper, go out to bid, hire a landscaper, get them on call, let's say, or under contract, where if we do have an instance like this, we can call them and say, okay, here's the address, go over and mow it. The thing we have to work out with the attorney is when we do that, right? If it's not an abandoned property, say it's just a property that the guy doesn't want to do it, right? We have to figure out parameters on when we go onto that property and mow it for the overall benefit of the public and the public health. That's what we have to figure out. The current process of basically just issuing ticket after ticket after ticket doesn't get compliance for the neighborhood, right? But we don't have a better way to do it right now. So that's why we're thinking we want to try a pilot program. I mean, and you guys could say, you know what, we just don't want to spend the money and we can live without that line item, and we will. But we're thinking outside the box here to try to find a better way to do this, and that's what we came up with.
I do have a quick question, Jim, about the inspectors. I kind of want to talk about that just for 1 second.
Sure.
What would you start them at, base salary?
Depends on who I would get.
An entry-level inspector.
Well, so entry-level inspectors, there's not a whole lot of entry-level inspectors out there that you would want, okay? So we have an engineering inspection supervisor position. I believe it was about a $70,000 a year position. And to get someone that you would want, that would probably be a little low. But if you could convince them that coming to work for a township is, you know, better than working as a consultant, then you would probably be able to get a couple people. You know, that's one of the problems we run into on a yearly basis, is thinking that we can hire somebody for $40,000 a year and get a superstar employee.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't always work, right? So in certain positions, you get what you pay for. You know, I would recommend it being in that engineering supervisor position, the inspection supervisor position, and it would probably be around 70,000.
70.
You have to remember, so you're taking people that work in consulting firms, that take home their car, that have an easy pass, that have an expense account. You know, most consultants that do this type of work have all that.
Yeah.
We're not going to allow that, right? Because we're kind of town government. So the guy has to drive his own car here, you know, and to the outside people, that's not, you know, that's not a big deal. Well, to the guy that's been driving from Barnegat to here or from Trenton to here and in a company truck putting 30 miles on a day each way, that's a benefit to him. Here, you know, he's not going to get that. He's going to have to drive his own truck. So that's a cost that these people that we're trying to hire would have to weigh.
And to get to the ability to generate income, you would need them to be full-time.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so you can't do
Yeah.
a couple of hourly part-time individuals, you need a full-time, or at
Yeah.
least, would you say 3 full-time?
Well, I mean, 3 would be fantastic. I would deal with 1 right now. Let's be reasonable. I mean, I would take 1 as just 1 to get in and get started. That's not in my budget request. I didn't request
Yeah, no,
1,
this is just,
but
we're just talking here.
just talking,
Yeah.
I mean, 1 would be fantastic, 2 would be even better. 3, I wouldn't do 3 until I could get it in and get it functioning. Because remember,
I thought you
all
said
this.
3, I'm sorry, I thought you said 3, you said 1. I'm getting I think the police budget confused with your request, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, 1 would be the way to go until we get it in and functioning and operating and get a program down, you know, which is what I would have to figure out and my supervisory staff to then get people in. I mean, at the end of the day, we could do all of it. We could do all the design work in-house too, or we could do 90% of the design work in-house. We're not going to because we don't have the time or the ability to do all of it. But 90% of it we could if I had the right engineering staff on board. I mean, that was what I did when I was an engineer, right? I did all the design work myself. All the road jobs that happened in Howell before I started here full-time, I designed in AutoCAD, wrote the specs. That was what I did. So it's not a big deal. You know, maybe the bridge work, maybe the dam work, I would still sub out, right? Which is you hire specialists to do that. You hire your structural engineering specialist, which I'm not. But there's definitely money to be saved. The question is, do you save it in engineering or in operating, or do you save it in capital? So the more money you spend in operating, the less you'll spend in capital. And I have analysis and spreadsheets that'll make your head spin. I didn't provide them to you tonight because I didn't think it was appropriate. But if you ever wanted to seriously consider this, I mean, I have all the numbers to show it.
Well, why don't you present us with a little bit of a business plan for it?
I absolutely could.
It's the only way we could review it and look at it.
Sure. No problem.
Mary? What kind of overtime does community development generate?
Total? I don't have the total split out.
10, 8,
Let's see here.
I mean, the
Say
pages
what,
that I
maybe
had,
30,000? Might be 30,000 total,
and that's for the entire department,
correct.
including TW, that would be, you know, including yourself and all of the department heads. Okay. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I'm just double checking, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks about around 30,000.
And what do you think generates most of the overtime?
Engineering. So we have engineering staff, so the two people I mentioned previously, and actually the one younger guy, work overtime almost every day, because we're just that busy. The thing that kills us is people walking in off the street asking questions. So we get questions all day long, right? We get phone calls all day long, and you know, people sometimes get aggravated because if they're not answering the phone when they call, that's because chances are people are at the window handling residents that are physically here. And when you do that, that kind of stops your flow of getting something productive done. So if you were writing a letter to a developer and now you've had to stop 3 times for phone calls and going up to the window, kind of breaks your train of thought. They have to pick that back up and keep going. And usually one of the best times of the day to get things done are when no one else is here and the doors are closed. So, you know, we have certain employees that are here every day early. We have certain employees that stay late every day. The one guy that I mentioned that's doing inspections right now, a lot of times he'll come in 7:30 because our contractors start at 7
Right.
usually. So if he's overseeing the patch program and those guys start at 7 a.m., he's out there at 7 a.m. to make sure that, you know, they're starting properly, they're doing the areas that are needed. Some of the other people usually stay late and they're working on a lot of escrow work, escrow paperwork, not the inspections, but they're doing some of the paperwork that goes along with it. However, you will see a little bit of a decrease in overtime this year because those employees, like I said, that are at the twilight of their career are deciding they don't want to work as much later at night and decide they want to go home and spend it with their family. So they've been working less. But between some other people, we're getting a little increase still on the younger guys. But that's a product of not having enough staff to do it all the time.
So, and this is just a judgment call on your part, I realize, but when we hired your assistant, do you feel that dollar for dollar that in fact we're saving money elsewhere? Because we don't-
200%.
Because we
There's
don't have
no doubt about it.
overtime, you know, in other places?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, since he's started, I can't even tell you how valuable that's been to us, just in getting things done. We actually, last year, we spent, was it $2,600 purchasing an outside billing software because our timesheets were done by paper still. So every time you build an escrow account, they had to write it down, transfer it 3 times. Why? Because this is the way we've always done it, because we did it that way in 1985, and we still do it that way. So I had enough, and I broke down and we did a lot of research, talking to neighboring towns and townships, finding out what programs worked. So we purchased a program. It's web-based. You know, we just have a subscription to it. Cost us $2,600. And I think so far, just in the 2 months of 2019, we're $4,800 in more escrow billing than we were last year. And that's a direct product of,
To the
you
new
know,
program?
people like me, when I do have a chance to bill an escrow, I can quickly log on real fast, put the hours in, put a note in, and log off, and I'm done. And I don't have to touch it 3 more times. And our staff doesn't have to spend, you know, let's say 40 hours a month processing timesheets, because that's how insane it was.
Right.
Okay, so now that report is done in about 15 minutes. I mean,
Understood.
that's technology, right? And that's getting people to use technology. You laugh,
No.
but
We got a doorbell ring.
No.
The phone is
Everyone's
ringing.
I'm
It
sorry.
sounds
Oh,
like a doorbell,
sure,
and she keeps
sure.
shoving it further onto the desk, but it's not getting any.
I'm trying to. I
Quieter.
Trying to
I
ignore
thought I
it,
had
and
shut it off. My apologies.
So just to recap, that $2,600 has already netted us $2,200 in 2 months, on top of what it costs. So I mean, it's working.
That's good.
And, my deputy is also billing to escrow accounts as well. And a new thing that we're doing is actually tracking all of our time we spend on capital projects. So we hire consultants to do capital projects. We have involvement, so we're actually tracking our own time to see what our involvement is, like what level of effort we're providing on top of that. And we'll be doing the same when we start designing more projects in-house. We're going to track the time so I can show you. It's already on the spreadsheet, but I want to just prove to you that, going outside versus inside, if we had the right staff to do it inside, we could, and we could save money. But it's operating versus capital, right? So everybody loves putting it in capital because it's a 20-year bond and you can pay for it for the next 20 years, but you're paying interest on projects for 20
No,
years.
not everybody loves that, Jim.
Well,
Not everybody,
all
no.
right.
Jim, I have a question.
Shoot.
Are these two separate vehicles, or is this the same vehicle?
Two separate.
Two separate for $28,000?
So we've been on a replacement program, trying to get 1 or 2 a year since I've started, instead of buying 6 to 8 every 5 years, which kind of didn't seem to make sense. So we were pretty good there for a few years. We did buy 1 or 2 from 2013 until 2017, and then that stopped because when money got tight, we just had to figure out where to cut it out of the budget. They cut the vehicles. So for the last, for 2017 and 2018, we haven't received any capital for vehicles. The vehicles that I was going to replace back then are 2 years older with a lot more maintenance problems. They've lasted. We've had a few that have not lasted that we've sent down to the mechanics and they just don't send them back. They take them off the road because they're unsafe. So we are looking to get another 2 vehicles. We currently have, the 2 vehicles I'm looking to replace are both over 106,000 miles and have some pretty bad rot issues. They're about 13 years old, and it's time.
Do these vehicles are they taken home by the employees?
No,
No.
none of my vehicles are taken home.
None of your vehicles?
Correct.
There are some that
I
are
have
taken
13
home.
vehicles,
Correct.
none of them are taken home.
Okay.
They all stay here.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But you have not reviewed capital, is that what you said?
That's
Brian?
correct. I
Thank
have
you.
not
Okay,
made any adjustments to the capital requests as of yet.
thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Quick question, Mayor. This may seem like I'm digging pretty deep, Jim, but a buddy of mine's a councilman out in Pennsylvania where I was in school, and we were just talking about creative ways to kind of cut. He told me unused phone lines. He cut like $2,000 out of his budget. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if he's just blowing smoke, but you're in here every day. There are a lot of, there's a big building. Unused phone, is that something you looked into? Or?
So you actually just touched a nerve with Manager Gagan right here.
Uh-oh.
That seems to be his pet peeve. We actually have. We've gone through our phone list multiple times, actually on my desk right now to go through again. So we constantly look at phone activity to see if there's anywhere we can cut. I think last year, how many did I cut last year? I think I cut 6 last year.
Yeah.
I cut 6 of my employees' phones because they weren't using them. What happens is people like using their own technology, right? So if they have an iPhone and we buy them a flip phone, chances are they leave the flip phone in their desk and they go out and they use the iPhone. Now, some people want to give their phone number out. Some people don't. Some people don't care, right? So that's the delicate balance. I have certain employees that want that flip phone to make 1 call a month just because they don't have to do it from their own personal phone, right? I can't blame them because some contractors, let's say once they get your phone number, are relentless and never stop calling, like mine. I mean, my phone never stops ringing, unfortunately. But yes, there are multiple people that we've cut, and I think we're going to try to cut some more.
Okay.
So, yeah, we have cut several phone lines already. A lot of people that have devices, instead of getting a cellular plan for it, we encourage them to use Wi-Fi, which is readily available. As Jim said, a lot of phone lines that were not in use, we've reduced. Another thing that we're looking at doing, in the example that he provided for that employee that only makes a few calls, per month, just so they don't have to give out their number, we have a new phone system that was just rolled out here in the building, and there is a method that for certain employees, they would be able to call through a certain number and call out to a contractor or a resident or whomever, and it would appear as if they were calling from the building.
Right.
That's the number that would show up on the caller ID, so that'll be getting rolled out shortly. So hopefully be able to cut a few more lines
Great.
that way.
Excellent, thank you, guys.
Understand though also that we have iPads now, right? So the more we're getting into the technology, we're actually giving out iPads and inspectors are doing inspections and inputting them right on their iPad as a way to save time and effort when they come back. Not all of them, it's still a struggle with certain people. We're never gonna fix that 100%, but that has actually increased some of our data usage because we've been buying data plans for these iPads. But we also have other ones that people weren't using at all. They were, using them for Google directions, and we took them away. So,
In addition, we just met with our Verizon representative recently, myself and our purchasing agent, and he's going to be reviewing our plans that we're on to see if we can generate any cost savings that way.
Awesome. Awesome, thank you, guys.
Any other questions from the dais? No?
Mayor, that's all I have as far as our budget for O&E.
Okay. So at this point, I would like to open this portion of the meeting to the public. Does anybody want to come up? No? Then I close that portion? So I believe at this point, then, we can end the meeting, right? So I will entertain a motion to end the meeting at 6:17.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.